Hey everybody, before you watch the video, click subscribe. Would you please, pretty please? It would help us at Soul Boom so much. Click subscribe.
Can I just ask you, even
Yeah.
if you cut it, like, did you ever feel when you were on The Office playing this character that was so aggressively intense and cared so much around so many people that were so apathetic? Did you ever like feel like turning it down in any way? Or were you ever like, I'm doing something so singular when everyone's doing, I mean, you know, obviously Michael Scott cared a lot too, but in a different way.
I think BJ Novak once put it very well, and he said Dwight is he's a plot initiator because he cares so much.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, you need a plot launched. You know, Dwight comes in like, today we're gonna wash all the glasses in the thing. We're gonna win the competition of the clean glasses of all the companies in this business park. Let's go. Like, you need to have characters that care because they've got to initiate. You know this as a showrunner on television shows.
You can't be reactive. You have to be proactive.
Yeah,
Someone not wanting to do something.
Who are the characters that launch actions?
Yeah.
You know, and that's a specific role that a character like Dwight does. Not more than Michael Scott. I mean, every episode was Michael Scott coming in, throwing a giant curveball that would launch the action of the show. But Dwight was the plot launcher.
But it's always, I don't know, I think it's so brave to care, and it's so brave to be passionate about something, and it's so brave to be proactive, you know? And there's very few characters that I'm actually like inspired by, and I go like, he's cool. Like I'm like that, and I think that's cool, you know? And I think, again, because everything's high school, and sometimes it's like for someone to go like, I want to win this. Everyone's like, yeah, I don't really care. Like the F students are the cool ones in school.
Yeah.
And like, I'm like unapologetically, like I'm a Tracy Flick. Like I'm a try hard. I'm a, like, let's do this, guys. Like, and everyone's kind of like, oh, and I'm like, no, let's go. Like, so to me, it's hard to not give up or let people's like, go like, why do you have to try so hard? Why are you so ambitious? Like I've gotten so shamed for all that kind of stuff. And I've just, that character has always been like, just really inspiring to me. And I don't really do that. And I've always thought of you as very similar to one of my comedic heroes, who is Leslie Nielsen.
Oh, okay. Wow. I've never been compared to Leslie Nielsen before.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, he was like classically trained, like brilliant dramatic actor.
Yeah. And then Naked Gun and
but
Airplane.
Played it serious.
Yeah,
that's why he was so brilliant.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I loved so much about what you were doing is like, it was so serious. Everything was so important to him.
Yeah. He took it very seriously.
And I love that. But I think people have to understand that your work on that show was 20 times more impressive because you were on a set with a bunch of people that were like very, even when you weren't rolling. Do you know what I'm saying?
Very cool. Yeah.
Yes. Cool people. Like
yeah.
One of the hardest parts about acting is like you want approval, you want people to like you, you get on a show and you're on a show with a bunch of really cool people, and then you have to go be a dork on camera, and you're like, am I losing this person's actual approval in real life? Because when they call cut, are they going to want to hang out with me?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's something not a lot of people talk about.
That's great. That's an amazing perspective. I haven't heard that before. That's really awesome. I love what you're saying about Dwight caring. And I hadn't really thought about that. And the first person to kind of like highlight that. And I love it.
I mean, first of all, the character you played on The Office, like, yes, quirky, bizarre, whatever. I always like locked it. I thought there was nothing weird about him. I thought there was nothing.
That's funny.
I was like, that is exactly how you should respond to this situation. Like, to me, you put in.
You related emotionally to Dwight.
100%. The stakes were always so high.
Yeah.
In every situation, it was life or death. That's who I am in every situation.
That's funny.
To me, he just cared more than anyone.
Yeah.
And treated this job. And look, The Office is truly, I think, one of the best shows ever made. I always was a little confused.
One of?
Well, The Comeback and Larry Sanders are two of my high ones. I think The Office, my jealousy of never being on it and not feeling like I got like approval of the Harvard guys that ran it, I'll always have a little bit of like, I can't make it my favorite show.
They fucked up with your sitcom, and I can tell you exactly why.
I'd love to hear your take, but thank you. But during that time, thank you. I do think it's interesting that you brought that up, because for people listening that don't work in our business, high school never ends. You're never out.
I say this all the time.
Really?
Hollywood is the high school lunch table. Who is invited to sit with the cool kids at the cool kids lunch table?
That's it.
And then all of these kids that are like really have the power in the comedy world.
Yeah.
They claim that they were like the nerdy kids who were always outcast, but they just have clumped together.
But if you kind of look like the popular girl, it's funny. It's like Michael Patrick King said once, like, we look like insiders, but we're actually the outsiders, and the outsiders, people that look like outsiders are often the insiders. And I think that's what kind of got confusing in a lot of ways, but the sitcom thing, when that happened, it was, multicam, single cam. This is all sort of very inside baseball stuff, which I'm realizing YouTube loves inside baseball, which is why I love YouTube, is like, like the shows that were like Seinfeld, that were like Reba, that were like Friends and Cheers with the, studio audience. That was juxtaposed with The Office, which was like this brilliant, subtle, awkward silences and, and they were sort of put back to back. And, I was like kind of publicly pretty like destroyed when that all happened. Very much, I think.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Oh, no, it's okay. For a lot of reasons that are some within my control, some without my control. I was just a kid. I didn't, really know what I was doing yet. And I think that because it was juxtaposed with such a cool show, it really stuck out as being like, like the, annoying, like bumpkin uncle.
They could have had a Dwight spinoff.
Oh, wow.
It would not have been as good as The Office.
Wow.
It would not have been as good as The Office. It would have made NBC Universal $1 billion to have the Schrute Farms
But it
show.
might have killed you.
And I'm so thankful ultimately that it didn't happen.
You might have been like, I'm stuck in this forever.
Yeah, forever. I kind of am stuck in it forever, but even more so.
But I do want to get back to Dwight. But the NBC thing, just because you brought it up, felt very much like I was Carrie in Carrie. It was like, you're prom queen, here we go.
Here's
and I was
blood.
like, they like me, they really like me. And then the pig's blood thing. So that was, I think that's something no one prepares you for, is you finally work your ass off and start to live your dream. And then it's Carrie. And then your coworkers or, colleagues are not happy for you. And that's something that no one feels sorry for you because you're successful and you're paying your bills, but like no one really prepares you for all that. But because I think you become a comedian because you're so afraid of being embarrassed. They say we become comedians to control how we're embarrassed. And that was such a public, giant embarrassment that it sort of broke me in a way.
And for those of you who don't know, during the late years of The Office, NBC went all in on a Whitney sitcom. It started multicam, and then they shifted to single cam, or the other way around?
Nope, it was just multicam.
Didn't they do a shift and they like a rebrand and they were going to redo it?
You really remember this. Yeah. So it was a multicam. I'm a comedian. And, I watched Roseanne growing up. I watched Seinfeld. And these are still the most successful shows. I mean, even today in syndication, they also cost a little less. I don't think they were ready to put office money behind a show of, two complete unknowns. It was me and Chris D'Elia, complete unknown comics at the time. And it was like, let's do this. Martin was my favorite show of all time, So Cosby Show, et cetera. And so I was like, why wouldn't we do this? Of course they're going to be cool and lit the same way all these. I didn't know how it all worked. I didn't know that if you put, whoever does the sound puts microphones in the audience, so it's going to sound like this really loud laugh track. It took me a couple episodes to go, wait, there's microphones in the audience? Let's pull those out so they're not so overbearing and loud. I didn't know that, you shouldn't do, if a joke really works, you shouldn't shoot it 3 times because then the audience knows it's coming and they're going to laugh prematurely. So you actually should say a different joke for the first 2 takes. And then once you've got it, do the joke you want to use in the show, so then you get an organic.
I didn't even know that. Wow.
It's a science. I mean, it really is a wild science. But, I think that the person that I was when I shot that and the character that it was about sort of a feral, gender reversal type show of a girl that didn't want to get married. And she was, kind of selfish and afraid and trauma, had a lot of trauma symptoms, unrecovered. And I think it was, it did test very well. I guess it tested the highest of any show. So they put this big ad campaign around it and we were on all these billboards and it was marketed like a corny sitcom, and it was annoying. I mean, I'm sure that if there was a show called Amanda, I'd be like, like, I'm sure I'd make fun of it too, you know, and it before like cancel culture, before all that, it was like, you know, Twitter had just kind of become a thing and it was like the thing to make fun of. Like SNL made fun of it. Like all the people I looked up to and thought were cool were making fun of me. It was like a joke on South Park. It was like God or the universe or whatever was like, we are just going to put you in your worst nightmare.
I had seen you do stand-up. I thought you were incredibly brilliant, incredibly beautiful. And here, but I thought it was a weird square peg in a round hole in the fact that you're not network. Like,
interesting.
And I mean that in the best way. Like, no matter how, you can dress you up sweet and give you kind of relatively nice, amenable jokes, but there's something in you that kind of like has like a bloody knife in your hand all the time. Yeah, and there needed to be there needed to be the HBO version of that.
I would have loved that. And thank you for saying that. You know, I think that a lot of, you know, and
there's something about you that's just not going to be palatable to people in Omaha, ultimately.
And it's not dicks or balls or vagina jokes or any of that. I think it's like a questioning of everything in a way that, at least maybe now I could get away with it more, but when you're that young, it's a little bit like, can you just enjoy your life already? Like I think it's also shows come off elitist as well sometimes. It's like, what are you complaining about? You know, I think Roseanne, like, you know, the show that I grew up loving is
brilliant
like
show. Love it.
So brilliant, which is why I wanted to work on it when it came back. And, you know, it was about bills, it was about money. And I was really trying to push that. Simultaneously, I was doing a show called Two Broke Girls that was about money. But I think that when you see, you know, I think we forget who is actually consuming entertainment. And when you see, you know, a sitcom with a girl and a guy and she's got nice clothes and she's just like, I don't know if I want to, it's just like comes off annoying and elitist and obnoxious. And I sort of see that. It did, again, I was an outsider that maybe looked like an insider. I think that
it was also that particular sitcom was coming at a time when, other than the Chuck Lorre sitcoms, no one was able to find that sitcom. So you did it. You just did it.
I just what?
You just sabotaged my sentence by taking your ring off and slamming it on the table in the middle of my sentence. Without using words once again.
Look, I know.
What do you have to say?
Is that a psycho? I mean, that is a psycho thing to do. That is a psycho way to steal focus while somebody is saying something profound.
I really feel like I should be your therapist. You should pay me $375 an hour.
I am trying so hard to just sit still.
But that was a time when they couldn't figure out the sitcom. Other than Chuck Lorre, who had 3 or 4 that worked in a row, and he did Two and a Half Men and Big Bang, and he figured something out, and good for him. God bless him. Some great actors, some good laughs.
And I think I have some insight on that if it's interesting. But I also, like, we say all this, and this is going to sound like arrogant. But when I just say facts, I feel like I'm being arrogant. But the show did well. That's the other thing. Is the sitcom that I did was doing really well, and critics just couldn't take it. I mean, Emily Nussbaum like destroyed me as like, I'm sexist. I'm putting a negative portrayal of a woman on television. And
wow,
I had a female showrunner. Half my writer's room was female. Like, we had female directors. Like, it was a gender reversal. The guy, I basically just wanted to do a gender reversal. I wanted to do Roseanne with a gender reversal. You know, Mad About You with a gender reversal. The guy was comfortable with commitment, wanted to get married, and she was scared because of her damage. And I wanted to do a sitcom that was about emotional damage and about overcoming all the stuff that we're talking about on podcasts, just dramatized, you know, about fear, about this girl that was really scared. And I guess to some people, it maybe came off, you know, I don't know what Emily Nussbaum's problem with it. I don't know what, you know, there was a journalist named Andrew Goldman, who, that's pretty known, interviewed me when I'm 26, 27 years old. And in the New York Times, I'm like in the back magazine, this feature that I read every Sunday. And the first question he asked was like, you know, people accuse you of sleeping with people to get to the top. Is that true? I truly, again, like, I am so numb to what's appropriate and inappropriate. My dad picked up hitchhikers and they slept at our house. Like, the most inappropriate stuff happened in my childhood, and I'm around comedians. So
you're like, oh, this must be how journalism works.
I'm like making jokes. I'm like, I guess I slept with the wrong people. You know, I'm like, you know, and then I was, you know, on Chelsea Handler's show a lot at the time. He's like, well, Chelsea Handler slept with the head of E! to get her show. So like, and I'm like, well, Bob Greenblatt, you know, he's not, he probably in his, I just went with it, and I didn't realize how horrifying it was. It took someone else, this woman author, Jennifer, I believe it's Weiner, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, to go like, this is totally inappropriate. I was like, It is like, I was just, so I didn't really know a lot of it was going on at the time. And it was a level of like misogyny that, and I don't call that. I'm never like, it's harder to be a woman in comedy. There's times I've been like, I think sometimes maybe it's a little bit easier because they need to have a woman on the lineup. So I feel like I got on lineups that maybe I wasn't ready to be on just because they like needed a woman, That's not the case anymore. But in the beginning, or at least people would be like, oh, this is like a novelty act. I'll give this a try. And so, it was like being.
But come on, dude, you're funny.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that.
For real,
But before
let's just get real.
No one's funny in the first couple of years they're doing stand up. You know what I mean? So it was like, but to get stage time, and I also felt like I was like, you know what? Maybe this like obsessive. A lot of the guys would go and chase women and be distracted. I was like, I have none of that. Maybe I have this little superpower because I'm a woman that I'm not gonna like go need to sleep with groupies at the show. I was like, I always just try to look for the positives. That's my coping mechanism, I guess, is to not complain or pout. My dad told me at a very young age, like, when I tell this story ever in 12-step meetings, it always gets a pretty big gasp. But my dad always told me life is not fair. Like, I never thought it would be anything different. He always was like, life is not fair. You're always going to have to work twice as hard to get half as far. He would wake me up in the middle of the night, 2 a.m, and like quiz me on spelling words because he was like, something's going to happen where you're going to get distracted. Like, you not only need to know this, you need to know it backwards and forwards because the circumstances of like quizzing you for stuff, it's not going to be as comfortable when you're in the test. Like, he was kind of he didn't give me love. He wasn't available, but he did want to prepare me for life. I think he was.
Well, he wanted to prepare you for spelling bees.
Spelling, he'd be like, there could be an earthquake. Like, he was always like, you don't know what's going to happen.
You don't know how to spell earthquake.
Always. He's like,
like, you've got to know how to spell it.
He would say like,
there's an EARTHQA.
He was like that. He would make me sit on the floor. He would make me do it with like before I ate dinner when I was hungry. He's like, you might skip lunch that day. You might get food. Like, he would like.
That's like Richard Williams having Serena Williams, hit tennis balls while he's like banging pot and pan lids.
Wouldn't he like yell the N-word, or he would pay people to yell the N-word at her while she was playing?
Wow.
Yeah, like wild. I mean, is that love? Is that abuse? It's hard to tell. I guess it's, however you alchemize it later. But I guess the point is, I've always had this like embarrassment around you, around the cool kids of like, I was on like the hokey sitcom and, it was so a lot of my like heroes made fun of me. Like Alex Sulkin was making fun of me on Twitter. Like, to be like the punchline there's something freeing about it. There's something kind of freeing about it because you're like, everyone's already made fun of me. I also make fun of myself. So how come I get to be super self-deprecating? And then when other people make fun of me, all of a sudden I'm going to take umbrage. Like, did I teach people how to treat me? Did I teach people how to? It's like, do I have a part in that? I think that's when I feel free, is when I go, what was my part? Have I been so self-deprecating that everyone's like, yeah, this is the girl we make fun of. She makes fun of herself. I don't know. But I always just try to go like, what's my side of the street? Like, what did I do to make people think that they could treat me this way? They might just be.
There is nothing wrong with a attractive, talented comedian getting a TV deal and trying to make a hit sitcom. There's nothing wrong with that.
When I say that about people, I know what I'm doing. I'm just trying to make myself feel better. If I go like, oh, that person doesn't deserve that thing.
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm just like jealous.
Yeah.
I'm like, I need to think of a reason that person has. Well, it's because her dad's in the business. Well, no, it's because they need to check a box. Like, whatever I need to tell myself, I'm like, oh, that's me trying to, assuage my inner child who's like, I want that thing, or am I not good enough? Like, that's all it is. So it took me a while to just go, oh, maybe it's that, or maybe it's just misplaced anger. We are in this business with a bunch of people that are traumatized and are not doing the work we're doing.
What is that about us? Because there's people like, there's other like character guys in their 50s that I'm often, I don't even want to say up against, but like they're considering between you 2 or 3 people, and we kind of all know. And then what is it about like them getting a role and me like, what is that about? What is that? And I mean, I guess envy happens in if you're an insurance salesman, it's like, oh, Nate Richards got the Doppweiler account, right?
I think there's healthy competitive energy. I know that for me, now that my engine is no longer, I need to get my dad to love me, I need to get my mom to approve of me, or I need to make money to pay for their nursing home and hospital bills. Like, fear of being broke, that I have that sometimes a little bit. My scarcity complex pretty intense. Actually, thankfully, I'm like, what is driving? Because I have done kind of enough work in 12-step programs. You were talking about this on an episode with Bobby Lee of, in order to have self-esteem, you have to engage in esteemable actions. I do a lot of esteemable actions. I have love in my life that's conditional and not talk. I've cut the people out of my life that make me hate myself or bring that up. Like, I do have to find an engine sometimes. I do have to find a motive for working the way that we work. And
does it have to be competition based?
No, not necessarily. But sometimes I got to go like, oh, that person's doing another special this year. You know what? I don't like that. I don't like the way that feels. Okay, I'm going to do that. Like sometimes, even if I'm kind of faking myself out, or even if I'm, sometimes have to pretend there's like more adversarialness than there is, or like, who do I need to prove anything to? I need to myself. Like, oh no, I fucked around and accepted myself. Shit. Now I'm kind of like, I want to make my son proud, or I want to achieve enough, so that I can take time off if I ever need to with him, or I'm going to start putting stuff out that he can actually watch when he gets older. Like sometimes I do feel a little bit rudderless, and sometimes, I try not to over pathologize when it is about being competitive, or like I have to prove to people that I can make jokes that aren't just about sex. I did that with my last special. I have to prove to people that I could do, now everyone's doing crowd work. I have to prove that I can do crowd work, like I think I got to prove the YouTube comments wrong, or, sometimes I do have to find a little bit of a, ostensibly unhealthy motive, but I don't know if there is I'm just going to do this because I love it. Acting and stand-up, it's very little acting and very little stand-up. It's mostly traveling, being on flights, sitting in makeup chairs, standing.
And writing in a, in a hotel room, in a,
Yeah. But it's also, I think there's something that I hate for this episode to be, once you get successful, it gets even harder because no one feels sorry for the successful person. But I would imagine someone like you being as successful as you are, having been on a hit that show, you were a very big part of that show, being successful. Huge, huge, huge. Yeah. It was you and Steve Carell. I mean, obviously Krasinski, whatever, but it was like, that was magic. Like that was magic in a bottle. And your character was so refreshing because especially in comedy, I talked about this so much when you were on that show. People tend to go to glib and they tend to go to dry and they tend to go to I don't care, and it's like funnier to not care. And when you're an actor on a show, you also are embarrassed to try. It's midnight, everyone wants to go home, and you're like, you know what I mean? And the crew's not laughing. It's you also have to maintain not buckling to seem cool for the crew or whatever's going on, know? And you did this big swing of like someone who's like cares. And usually people find humor in apathetic, not giving a shit. And I always try to fight back against that. Against like, let's just be as low energy as possible and not give a shit. And like, that's what's funny.
Yeah.
But I think there's something.
I learned that in theater school. I mean, that was really kind of like when you go to theater school, it's all about stakes, and it's high stakes. And then when you do like Commedia dell'arte and Moliere and Shakespeare clowns and that kind of track of comedy, it is about how much you care is where the comedy comes from. So it's a different school of comedy in a way. But you're kind of
I loved about it, and sorry, and you can totally cut this out if you want. Like I think that show, a little bit for me, sometimes I'd be like, well, this is kind of just like people go to Chili's, like that's like a fun night for them. Like people drive PT Cruiser, you know what I mean? It was like sort of a lot of rich Harvard people making fun of poor people at times. I love you guys. A lot of you are my friends, and that made sense. That's your experience, but like coming from, a family that like we went to Chili's for real. It wasn't like a punch,
Sure.
And the fact that you were portraying someone that actually cared about that job instead of like, wouldn't it be funny if someone had to work in a paper mill and like who gives a shit, and we're all just not, you like cared. Like that's how most people are that work in offices, like, just because you're not working on the Warner Brothers lot doesn't mean, everyone doesn't hate their job.
The Soul Boom Podcast. Subscribe now on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever else you get your stupid podcasts.